The story you will only see here on HLN.
Please, please, I am asking you, help all your children.
I go inside a sweat lodge myself and endure searing, intense heat to get the inside story on the sweat lodge manslaughter trial. Did a charismatic self-help guru recklessly cause the deaths of 3 people? You don't want to miss this one. And the woman who tried to change Oprah's life joins us to talk about whether she was successful in transforming the queen of all media.
Please, dear Mother, Mother Earth, listen to the cries of pain from the animals and answer their cries. Hi there.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Experienced hours in a sweat lodge in the hopes of understanding what those poor people went through in Arizona when 3 people died after a sweat lodge ceremony. Tonight, never before seen video inside a sweat lodge. Plus, I will tell you about my intense experience as dramatic testimony continues in Arizona in the manslaughter trial of that fella right there squirming in the defense chair. Famous self-help guru James Ray. He conducted the deadly sweat lodge ceremony. Kirby Brown, James Shore, Liz Newman, they all died after the October 2009 sweat lodge ceremony. One woman who was inside that sweat lodge told the court she had no idea anything was wrong until the very end. Listen to this.
Is it true then that the first time that you realized that there was a life-threatening situation at Angel Valley was when you were already outside the sweat lodge ceremony and you'd seen somebody doing CPR on James Shore?
Yes.
Hearing all this dramatic testimony, I wanted to find out what it's like to be inside a sweat lodge. You see that? That little thing, that lump? That's a sweat lodge. Now, what do those people in Arizona experience? Well, to find out, along with some of my HLN colleagues, I headed to Georgia, the Georgia mountains, in fact, for an authentic, and that's the key, authentic sweat lodge ceremony. Now, I made it through. It was hard. It was hot. It was claustrophobic, but I made it through. But the truth is, I will never really know what these folks, Kirby, James, and Liz, okay, Kirby, James, and Liz, what they went through before they died. Why? Because the sweat lodge I experienced seemed very, very different from the one that James Ray ran. So what makes this sweat lodge that I went to different from the one in Arizona? I'd like to hear your questions. 1-877-JVM says, straight out to Connie Joy, a former James Ray follower. Connie, thanks for joining us. You took part in previous James Ray sweat lodge ceremonies. Now, the man who led our ceremony, Gary Four-Star, who I loved, has never had a death or serious injury in the 3+ decades he's been doing it, as taught to him by his own father, a spiritual experience. But you've said James Ray did have numerous problems before his final sweat lodge fiasco. So tell us about Ray's troubled history with sweat lodges, and did he even have any training to do a sweat lodge?
Well, Jane, you know, the question you brought up at the end is, did he have any training? He claimed during the events that he was trained by Native Americans to do the sweat lodge. I have since been told by numerous people who obviously are our authorities in it that it takes many years, 20 years plus, to be trained to be somebody that they would consider qualified to do this. So if you go back to his history, back in 2005, a man was taken away by ambulance after his sweat lodge experience with James. In 2007, I was there. I saw a woman carried out who couldn't control the movements of her arms and legs. Many people laying on the ground all around, throwing up, disoriented, shaking, and chills. And then, of course, 2008, I know someone who had trouble breathing, and some people said he stopped breathing twice. Another woman was unconscious or unresponsive for several hours, and another friend of mine thought she was going to die. She called for them to get James to come help her, and he had already left the scene.
Unbelievable. And I want to distinguish between the James Ray experience and the experience that I had with Gary Four-Star, which I loved. He's somebody who was taught this by his dad and has done it for 35 years and knows every last detail to a T. and considers every last detail sacred. He's not there to make a buck. So with that said, here I am after the Sweat Lodge ceremony. Take a look at this. Hey.
Look at her. It's just like walking first round, pop down, up and roll.
Wow. Quite an experience, one to remember. I will remember this definitely for the rest of my life. And it's really beautiful. Look at that. Look how hot it is in there. Now, this is something special. Our cameras were actually allowed inside the Sweat Lodge during this extremely sacred ceremony. Watch as they pour water on the rocks to create the steam. You are looking at me and others there. Really, we're in a vulnerable state. It's a spiritual. I look like I'm in a trance because I am in a kind of trance. I forgot the cameras were on me, and I was just, I couldn't see a thing. It's pitch black when you're in there. And I thank all these good people for letting us bring our cameras in for this very specific and limited time. People were really in a spiritual state, and that's the thing. Here's a weird thing. We brought this tape back, right? Guess what? The video wouldn't play. It took several engineers to make this video play back, which kind of makes me wonder, were the spirits saying, hey, we don't want you to play a lot of this video? That being said, you know, here's the thing that I would say that makes these two experiences that I had and that the James Ray experience. Ours was a spiritual experience. It was not an endurance test. Nobody was there in an ego-based way to show, I'm tough, I'm the toughest person. Dr. Judy Kuriansi, critics say Ray's Sweat Lodge had become this sort of ego-based Sweat Lodge, ego endurance thing about, well, I'm the toughest guy and I can do this and you should be able to do it too, and you may feel like you're gonna die, but power through it because look how strong I am. And they also, some critics have claimed that he has some kind of God complex. Your thoughts, knowing the Native American rituals?
Well, exactly. I think that there are people who are subject, like perhaps Ray, to what's being called plastic shamans. A shaman is a real spiritual leader, and that is a person who goes through, leading people through these kinds of sacred experiences. Like you said, you are really enduring sensory deprivation. As you said, it's pitch black. I've been in one myself that is also run by very, very legitimate people. You're wearing very little. There's prayers, drumming, sometimes singing, sometimes total silence. But the sensory deprivation is disorienting. And so you do not have rational thought, and people do have to be watching after you, I believe, especially if you are not someone who is really a veteran at things like that.
Yeah, and you know
so
what? It was hot.
The firekeeper, the gatekeeper.
Yeah, the gatekeeper. This guy, I trusted this guy. There's a big difference between the guy I was with and James Ray. First of all, he didn't charge $10,000, all right? I'm going to go to Sandy in Oklahoma. Your question or thoughts, Sandy?
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
My question is, I wondered if, in your experience, you were asked to fill out a medical questionnaire ahead of time. There's some conditions that might eliminate you from that experience, and if they might have had medical people standing by.
And my answer is no, I didn't fill out anything, and I think it was done on the understanding that it's a very small space, and if you're feeling bad, you can leave. You can roll out of the tent anywhere. I mean, there's blankets. Look at this guy with this little baby on the back. It was so cute. What a nice group of people. But there's blankets there. You can roll out. You lift the blanket and roll out if you don't like it. Deborah Opry, my understanding is in the case of the Sweat Lodge, they did sign release forms. Is that going to hurt the prosecution's case?
Well, they have a duty of care over these people, and first of all, when you go for massages, when you go horseback riding, you're always signing these releases. You're always being asked certain questions. If they were asked certain questions and they answered it honestly, it's going to help the case. But you have to look inside exactly what was going on, and when you're paying $10,000, this is not something that is excusable, especially when you've got 3 deaths. First time an accident, but with 3 deaths, they should have been more with the monitoring. So I say yes to the medical questionnaires. On the legal aspects of it, I think there's going to be a conviction because you can't say you assume the risk.
Well,
You know,
I
this is a
say
death
never
case.
predict what's going to happen in a criminal trial. Boy, have I learned that from experience. But on the other side of the break, we're going to talk to Sonny Hostin, who has been in-depth in this trial. It's going to give us an analysis based on what I've gone through and what's gone on in the trial. There I am praying. And by the way, I prayed for the two-legged creatures and the four-legged creatures when I was asked if I wanted to give a prayer. That's what I said. Everybody hang tight. We've got so much more. My experience at a sweat lodge and the self-help guru sweat lodge manslaughter trial. What do you think? Whatever question you want to ask me, go ahead. Yes, I was very sweaty, but ask me whatever question about what I experienced. 1-877-JVM says. I will answer it.
What do you think about that last one?
It's fantastic. It was so hot.
I felt like my skin was melting.
Yeah.
Did you feel that?
She was a champion.
Thank you.
So was Jay.
The
Jay
heat?
was a champion.
Tell me about the heat on the last one.
We bonded.
Did.
We're going
We did. Hug it out.
very tribal feeling, which is so cool because we are so alienated. And I don't think we realize how alienated we are as a culture until we go into a situation like that and experience that kind of basic tribal culture where people are praying together, they're screaming, they're crying for a loved one or a sick person or somebody who's addicted. And it just felt so timeless. Tonight, my experience, and it was amazing, inside an authentic sweat lodge as self-help guru James Ray stands trial for the deaths of 3 people who died inside his version of a sweat lodge. So what's the difference between his version and mine? Is his sort of sweat lodge on steroids? Why did we all make it out okay? Was it the temperature? Was it the preparation? Was it our state of mind? Was it a combination of everything? Was it the fact that we weren't dealing with a guy with a huge ego who was trying to prove something? We were dealing with a very humble man who was taught the sweat lodge experience by his father, a Native American. I want to go to Frederick, North Dakota, who is a Native American and who has some thoughts on what I experienced and this manslaughter trial. Frederick.
Hello, my name is Cedric, C-E-D-R-I-C.
Okay, hi, Cedric.
And I appreciate the opportunity to be you've given me here. You know, I've grown up in this way. You know, we use our language a lot. There's what I see on TV you would never be able to show. And I'm part of the Sioux Lakota Nation, the Great Lakota Nation. And in our way, men and women do not partake together. And what you're showing on the screen, you would never be able to show on the screen. And then not only that, but it's real important to note how far you've come from the original teachings. You know, this is where we're at out there in Sedona, and
all right, Cedric, I think you're making a very good point, and here's my big issue. What I experienced in the traditional sweat lodge was entirely different from James Ray's sweat lodge, which really seemed to be a sweat lodge on steroids. Our leader, Gary Forstar, told me that the key is the leader's intention and attention. Listen to what he said to me.
Attention is important. Without intention, nothing happens. But attention. So where does our attention? Where attention goes, energy flows. If you have good intentions but don't let your attention flow there, then you'll have disaster. But we allow our intent, we set our intention, which is to hold a space for a lodge for whatever's going to happen to take place. But then we focus our attention on the prayers and on the songs and on each other.
Hostin, what is the ego issue in this trial?
Well, you know, when you call it the ego issue, he's been charged with reckless manslaughter, Jane. And the bottom line is they have to prove that he failed, that there was a risk of death. He knew of the risk of death, and he just disregarded it. And that's why I really think the prosecution in this case has a really tough battle. And, you know, I'm a former prosecutor, and so I'm usually really supportive of prosecutors. But this is a very, very difficult case for them to show because, like you said, Jane, there were blankets there, and you could have left if you wanted to. There were people there that did leave. These 3 victims, unfortunately, did not leave, even though they had the ability to.
Got to leave it right there.